Anything, I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to Monday night. We are, oh, you know what? I'm gonna show everybody. You should be able to get these from your delegate soon, but here's the final conference report for this year. The electronic version is out, but I just got mine in the mail. So give it a read. Um, Maybe give it to someone who's not in service and let them have a read. Some people have no idea. They're in AA for a long time and no idea that there's a final conference report for our once a year business meeting for all of the US and Canada. Tonight, we're going to start on the General Service Office chapter. And there's a couple of things to know because the acronym G.S.O is one that gets thrown around AA all the time. Usually, most commonly, for most people, is they hear somebody say, we're going to send a contribution to G.S.O, which for the service geek to the 100th power is not possible. That doesn't mean we have to kill the messenger, right? If the group is sending money, it just won't. The point I want to make is to understand is that there's no legal entity called GSO or General Service Office. It's a location where people work. There used to be almost two locations, the AA Grapevine office and the General Service Office. But that's when they were on separate floors and rarely did they combine, but that's been changed for a long time. The General Service Office is simply where the employees of the AA Grapevine and the AA World Services Board live and work. Not live, but work. The GSO side that we're talking about here is the AAWS side, which means that the General Service Office, all of those employees at GSO work for AA World Services. Their paycheck comes from AA World Services. There's basically two parts of the operation at a high level. Obviously, there's a bunch of different departments, which we'll get to. But there's basically two overall missions that the General Service Office staff carries out. The first is publishing. That's the first of the two missions. AAWS publishes all the conference-approved material and the service-approved material, except for the Grapevine magazine and books. But everything else goes through GSO Publishing. In fact, maybe you know somebody, and please, if you don't have the announcement, ask your delegate for it. But the director of publishing at GSO is retiring. An announcement went out the other day. They will be searching for a replacement that is always an alcoholic, always has been. But if you know someone from publishing or editorial or whatever, please, everyone deserves a shot to apply. But publishing is one side. The other side is services. So that's what we commonly refer to at GSO when we say GSO staff. That is the literature desk, the corrections desk, the regional forums and international convention desk, the cooperating with professional community and accessibilities desks, the group services desk, the public information desk. That's the other side of GSO. Now, inside both of those organizations, publishing and services, are a whole bunch of other departments that serve the overall operation. If you it says about 100 employees, give or take. You never know, any day. Full-time, about 80, usually about 15 part-time. But, where it says support for GSO, group and individual contributions, income from AWS publishing, any excess income after operations from the Grapevine, there hasn't been any of that for a long time. But even, sometimes they correct it, sometimes it's wrong. It says, who may contribute to GSO? The answer to that question is nobody. We make our contributions to the General Service Board per long form of Tradition 9, that the trustees are the receivers of the voluntary contributions. And that money gets deposited in a General Service Board account. A few times a year, the General Service Board moves money over to AA World Services to carry out the services. Now, if you're somebody who likes literal things, and God knows in service, we run into some literal people. If you like to see literal examples, I can give you an easy one. Sometime when you have free time, the next week or two, make an electronic contribution on the AA.org website. And obviously, you'll be using a debit or a credit card. When you hit contribute and it says confirmed, you can look at your bank app, your credit card app, your debit card app, and you will see a pending charge hit from the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, Inc., because that's who you just gave money to. Then, when you're done with that, go to the online literature catalog and buy some book you don't have, or buy a book for somebody else that you know doesn't have it as a gift. Make that purchase, and when you go to your app via credit card or your debit card, you will see the receipt is from AA World Services, Inc., because that's who you're buying the book from. So we buy literature from AAWS, Inc., but we give contributions to the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, Inc. It talks about self-support. There's so much bad information out there. As far as we don't make half our money in contributions and half our money in literature. That's only when you look at the total literature sales. But in order for us to sell literature, we have to employ editors and publishers and translators, and we have to do all the work, and we have to buy the material and the ink and the paper and the covers. Like, we have to spend all that money in order to sell something to somebody. So when someone gives us, like, just say $10 for literature, we've already spent like $6 or $7. So half of our revenue might be from literature, but it's not profit. If you look at our overall expenses for AA World Services, Inc., it's about 70% contributions, 30% literature profit. During good years, it's 80-20. And lately, we're having trouble with both. Contributions are down 15%, and literature sales are not what they once were. Obviously, electronic and digital media is affecting that. And the Grapevine, you can support by getting your own subscription. You can support by getting someone else's subscription. You can support by the Carry the Message program, which is where you can pay for a Grapevine subscription and they will get it to somebody who lets the office know that they need one, whether they're in a correctional facility or somewhere else, they have some situation. The maximum contributions are now $7,500 for an individual each year and a live AA member. They are $10,000 if somebody who is a member of AA passes away and is allowed to leave that to the General Service Board, one time only. It can't be any kind of recurring trust or an account set up so that it gives money every year after you're dead. No, it's $10,000 one time, and it has to be from you. It has to be from your estate. Sometimes the General Service Office will get checks from somebody that'll say, my dad died. We had a great life once he got sober. We wouldn't have had the life we had if he didn't get sober. Our mother got sober. We get And I wanted to send this in memory of him. We don't take in-memory contributions. It has to be from their estate. It has to be their money that they left for us. And problems appear all the time. I just had an intergroup call me where somebody left them $150,000 and just said to Alcoholics Anonymous, well, that's a bad description in a will. In fact, it got so convoluted because the lawyer identified that they meant this one local intergroup office, but then they wanted a letter from G.S.O stating that that office is Alcoholics Anonymous, which they're never going to give them that letter because no one gets to claim that they're Alcoholics Anonymous except for groups and conventions. Like it might be the intergroup of so-and-so city or the central office of so-and-so city. But it becomes convoluted. Now, that is a good way. A lot of intergroups follow the G.S.O contribution limits. So if you're dying with a lot of money, leave $10,000 each to a lot of intergroups and the general service office. But don't leave $100,000 to the general service office because I can tell you what's going to happen. They're going to send it back. And they're not going to like take their 10 and send you a check for 90. They're just going to send the $100,000 check back. And people try to get around this. Sometimes people will, now you could give money to a group. Like I've said, if you have more than $7,500 a year, put money in your basket. Groups don't have a limit. Intergroups don't have a limit. But we've even had situations where somebody has said, I'm sending it to intergroup and they can launder it through their account so they can send it to you. And I don't have to live. Well, obviously, we're not going to have anything to do with any verbiage that has the words launder in it. I mean, but I just let you know because so many people in AA have no idea. No idea. But yet we know we have a lot of people who are very thankful for the life they got to live and they want to leave something. So it's good to have information. If you leave money, it should be to the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, Inc., or at least the General Service Board of AA. Then it'll be clear as to who it should go to. I want to talk about AA World Services. Obviously, AA World Services is near and dear to my heart. I served on that board for 8 years, from 2009 until 2017. AAWS deals with the staff assignments, obviously deals with the conference. All that stuff gets done through staff. All that background that gets put together, that gets sent out for the final conference agenda. You know, there's a staff member who has a position called conference secretary. That's the conference desk. There's all these other desks, and we believe in rotation at the office. Now, obviously, I don't want to say there's a pecking order, but let's just say things like literature and PI can become, and public information can be very complicated. You'll often see a more senior staff member on those desks, but they do rotate every 3 years because we don't want anyone being in charge of anything. And rotation is taken so seriously at the office that, let's face it, it's 2025. Sure, some of you work in an office. You no longer need to like move down the hall to get that phone number. You just have IT change the phone number for that office. We don't do that. We have complete rotation. If you're leaving literature and going to CPC, you go down and get the Cooperation of Professional Community office. So rotation. And the other thing about rotation, when you think about it, is that obviously we have people who have family emergencies. Obviously we have people who get ill. Unfortunately, every once in a while, maybe somebody passes away. And then we have special projects all the time. But rotation is also a good way that once an employee is there 10 years, they have a good idea of a couple of desks so that everybody can fill in for each other. That's another reason for rotation. The obviously corrections desk handles corrections. The Cooperate and Professional Community desk handles CPC. A lot of these desks, the staff member also serves as the secretary of that trustees committee and often of the corresponding conference committee. So when I look at like Cooperate with Professional Community and corrections, that staff member is the trustee secretary for the trustees committee and is the staff member for the conference committee. The staff member on the conference desk is the staff secretary for the trustees conference committee. Now, one that gets confusing sometimes is international versus international convention and regional forum. So international means our function and interaction and relationship with AA outside the United States and Canada. That's what the international desk does. They are the secretary for the Trustees International Committee, which deals with our relations and our working with other offices. They plan the trips. Many international locations will invite someone from our structure to their 50th anniversary or the 20th anniversary. We also have the World Service Meeting, which meets every 2 years. And that gets a little confusing too, so I try to talk slowly about that. The World Service Meeting is every 2 years, and every 4 years, it's in New York. So one of the two out of every 4 years is in New York. So it goes New York, then 2 years later, somewhere else in the world. Then back to New York, then 2 years later, somewhere else in the world. The staff member on the international desk is the secretary and the planner for the World Service Meeting. The International Convention and Regional Forum, I talked about it a little last week, that's one trustees committee. It's usually one assignment, except for the 2 years leading up to the international, when that gets broken away so that that employee, staff member, can only focus on the international convention. If you're planning a party for 50,000 people, you need to give that person the proper amount of time and many trips to that city. There is a staff member on the nominating assignment because of how busy it is. They are also the secretary to the trustees nominating committee, and they are the staff secretary to the conference committee on trustees. But that's basically almost like our recruitment arm. That's where all the announcements go out for Class A trustees and general service trustees and non-trustee directors. That's where all the information goes out to all the delegates for the regions when it's time to elect a regional trustee or a trustee at large. So that assignment is very busy. They receive all the resumes. They collate all the resumes. They serve as the secretary for whichever committee or board is reviewing the resumes so that they can decide who they're going to interview. Then they make all the logistical plans for those interviews. So it's a very busy assignment. Public information, much like corrections. The staff secretary is the staff secretary. The staff member for public information is the secretary for the trustees public information committee and the conference public information committee. But that assignment has a little bit of an extra kicker. Even though we have no opinion on outside issues, we still need somebody to tell people that because they think after 90 years, we're going to change our mind one day. The same reporter who's called like 30 times is going to call the 31st, wants to know if we want to make a comment about some AA member who's a celebrity who just got locked up, or some new article in some journal about college binge drinking or fraternity hazing or DWIs. But we still need somebody to deal with all of that. And then AA gets asked to do interviews on radio, on TV, on streaming platforms now. And most times for that, we use a Class A trustee because they're not an alcoholic. So they don't have anonymity issues. They can say their last name, they can show their face. So the PI person not only is dealing with the trustees PI committee, the conference PI committee, they are also kind of serving as like our chief communications officer. The staff coordinator. I want to talk slow about this because this often gets confused too, because we have two positions that kind of sound the same. We have director of staff services and we have staff coordinator. The staff coordinator is one of the AA staff members, and you rotate into that job. You become like a first among equals, I think would be the best description, kind of like the description they use for the Supreme Court presiding judge. Like the staff coordinator deals with all the staff schedules. The AA staff deals with all the desks working together, deals with all the staff meetings of the AA staff when they get together. And when we say AA staff, we mean one of the AA members who works there, who is on one of these desks. Another important thing about the staff coordinator is that they're a member of the AAWS board, of the AA World Services Board. Remember, 2 employees are on the AA World Services Board, the general manager and the staff coordinator. When the staff coordinator rotates to a new job, they leave the AAWS board and the new staff coordinator joins. The current staff coordinator is Racy J. The other position is called Director of Staff Services. The person in that job now, that's always an alcoholic, is Sandra, is the Director of Staff Services. The Director of Staff Services has a much broader scope than the staff coordinator. They're almost like the second in command to the general manager. And because the general manager has to travel to certain events and meetings, the staff coordinator is in the office, watching over all the staff, not just the AA staff, because then we have all these services that support the fellowship and support the staff. We have operations. You have records, literature orders, contributions, all these staff assistants that work in operations. We have a receptionist. We have finance and accounting. We have a chief financial officer. We have a controller. We have accounts payable, accounts receivable, just like any other organization. We have technology services. We didn't have to have that 30 years ago. We didn't even have that 15 years ago. We had like an outside part-time person. But obviously, as technology has started to really become integral in any organization's operations and business, we now have a director of information technology and a technology department. Contributions. You know, sometimes if you go to a regional forum, or sometimes if people, like I said, we have people who look at very granular information. But sometimes people look at our financials and want to know, why do we spend so much money on receiving and processing contributions? Because we do, we spend an enormous amount of money. But the reason for that is a spiritual one, is that we don't care if someone sends 50 cents or $50 or 7,500. Every one of them has to be cataloged, received, deposited in the bank, sent a thank you letter to the group or the individual. Electronic contributions obviously cut down on this, but this is AA. It's nothing to get an index card with a paper clip with like $7 on it. That's a usual occurrence in the contributions department. Or Somebody who's a treasurer is not yet at the point where they're allowed to have a bank account. So they go to get money orders, and we get money orders. I've actually seen an index card with 3/4 taped on it that a member sent in. And I think about, like, it cost us more to process that, but how much must that member love AA that they were willing to even find 75 cents, which probably to them is $100 to somebody else, to send in? We have human resources. Obviously, if you have 100 employees, you need an HR department. And we have the same issues of any other company. We have employees that want a decent retirement program. We have employees that deserve a good benefits program, medical insurance and dental and short-term disability. And then it's 2025. What decent sized organization doesn't focus on wellness today? So that falls to HR. I mean, I think in my corporate career, wellness maybe started in like 2005. By 2010, it became very popular, but companies realized how important it was to not just give their employees medical insurance for when they get sick. Like, can't we have a day every 6 months where, like, you can give blood if you're a man and get your PSA tested? And how many lives have been saved early because of things like that, or blood pressure or nutritional help? And let's face it, yes, some of our staff members are recovered alcoholics, but for most of our jobs there, you don't have to be an alcoholic. You might be. You might be one in drinking. You might be one in recovered. Either way, it's none of our business unless it affects your work. But we have to have our own employee assistants inside HR to provide things to our employees, whether that's treatment or whether it's counseling if they're having a tough time in life. So we have a real HR department. And then we have to make sure that we're giving people raises and reviews every year, making sure we're giving proper feedback to employees maybe who are not performing. Like, it is no different. We have meeting and events because we have a lot of meetings and events. We have the 7-day general service conference. We have 3 board weekends in New York City. We have regional forums around the country. We have the World Service Meeting. Like, the meeting and events team has to have their hands around all of that. We have mail and shipping, which most of that happens at warehouses. We have a warehouse in the US and a warehouse in Canada. But it's super, I would tell anyone who visits the general service office, first of all, it's well worth it. On Fridays, there's first of all, it's closed right now, PSA, public service announcement. They're under construction right now. But during regular times, there's a meeting at 11 a.m. every Friday. It's an awesome meeting to go to. People from all over the world stop in. You never know who's going to be there. You just have no idea. I actually was there one time for our board meeting and for the AA meeting, which is an open meeting, where I noticed things looked odd when I got there early that morning. They just seemed, the lobby, it just noticed it didn't feel regular. And that was because a member of the cabinet at that time wanted to come to an AA World Services board meeting because they were fascinated with Alcoholics Anonymous. And they wanted to visit our archives, and they wanted to go to the open meeting because they had a relative whose life was changed by Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's kind of weird when you're in a meeting at G.S.O. and Secret Service agents are lowering the blinds and closing them so that no one can see from the outside, and not for anonymity, because that person doesn't have anonymity, but for protection. And then to just see that person's like overall love for Alcoholics Anonymous. But you never know. I've seen a priest from the middle of nowhere, Africa, who's a missionary who's been sober like 20 years and has been to like 6 meetings in their life, but corresponds with other AA members by email, and I'm sure now Zoom meetings and literature. I've seen uh, people from all parts of the country. Even if they don't speak English, they want to sit there. And, if you've never visited a meeting in a country where you don't speak the language, I could just tell you this: it doesn't matter. Yes, there's a lot of English speaking meetings in a lot of places, but I'm just telling you, if you go to a native language meeting, you will know who the old timer is. You will know who the newcomer is. It it's I actually find it very freeing to not have to listen to anyone and just like sit there and just think how great Alcoholics Anonymous is, and not really have to be in the day-to-day drama of the people I go to meetings with every day. We all know how that is, right? But I'm just telling you, it is a true gift to go to meetings, but you never know who's going to show up at that meeting. And you can go on a tour of GSO. And the reason I mention all this is that one of the things I think that's a shame sometimes is everybody knows the GSO staff. If they're involved in service, they've seen the names, or they've met them at their assembly, or they've met them at a regional forum. But I'm telling you, go up and shake the hand of the other employees. They're not making millions of dollars working there. They're out there making sure the literature is getting shipped, making sure our bills are paid, making sure the contributions are tracked, making sure our computers work, making sure like they all deserve a handshake from us. And obviously they're not doing service, but they are doing work that enables the facilitation of 12-step work. The publishing department is not even covered in all the ones I just covered. The publishing department's like its own animal at GSO. And what do they do there? They create the catalogs and order forms. They oversee the translations and the licensing. They handle all the research and development for new publications that we might be working on or thinking about. They process all the literature orders. They deal with all the inventory issues that we have because we sell thousands of books. They deal with all the customer inquiries. That's a good term for customer complaints, but they deal with all the inquiries. They maintain a small in-house shipping department depending on the size of the order. And they also manage the outsourced warehousing in Canada and the United States. And why do we have a warehouse in each? Because then we don't have to worry about people's literature being delayed because it's going through customs and has to be inspected and costs more money to ship. So if someone in Canada wants something, it's coming right from somewhere in Canada. A little thing about translations, because sometimes people, it's kind of a nuance. And again, I'll try to talk slowly. Is people always wonder, well, who publishes the books? Do we, and we send them over to Russia and send them over to England and send them over to France? Do they? It's kind of, and first of all, you can only have a literature license if you have a general service structure in your country. So you have to have a general service board and a conference structure. If you have that, you can apply for a license from AA World Services. And you can produce your own literature. However, we have to look at everything before it goes to final print. We have our own translator look at it to make sure that the first 164, for example, are what they're supposed to be. But they publish and print their own books and sell their own books. If you see a foreign language book in our catalog, and sometimes you'll see that, it means that that country does not have a license to produce literature. So we do. Like Israel does not have a general service board or structure. They recently have a central office committee, which is usually the first step to building a structure. But we produce a Hebrew big book. Korea does not have a general service structure. We produce a Korean big book. That's why there's 63 autonomous general service structures around the world. But our literature is available in over 100 countries. And that's because many of those countries don't have a general service structure. The big book is now up into the 70s as far as the big book being available in certain languages. But we handle that. They also handle the conference approval process. So if you write in something that you want a new book, you want to change a book, you want to add a book, whatever, it goes to the literature desk at G.S.O, who then sends it to the conference committee on literature. And if they decide to do something, they send it back to the general service board and say, we want you to do this. And then it goes back to the literature desk, but at the same time, it goes to publications. Because the literature desk deals with the approval process, but the actual putting the book together, writing the book, translating the book, binding the book, that is all in publishing. We also have some newsletters. We have Box 459. We have the quarterly report that comes out about the board weekends. We have Behind the Walls about corrections. We have About AA, which the Public Information Desk puts out. And then we have one of the most complicated things at G.S.O, intellectual property, our trademark and our copyrights. And that's why we're incorporated, so that we can own them. And it's, listen, people say the big book belongs to the world. I get it. But if we believe in the conference approval process, and that's what we approved, the only way to make sure that there's integrity in that piece of literature is to have it copyrighted so that no one else can print it and change it. So we have that. We have the archives department, which is huge. And the archives department is it's really an archives and history department, if you were going to be technical about it. We have the display cases, which anyone who goes to G.S.O, make sure you have time to go to the archives department. Make sure you go on the tour and go to archives. But the archives you see there are like a 5,000th of what we have. We have a proper air and temperature controlled facility, a real one, like with underground that people rent from, where some of the most important stuff in AA history is stored permanently. We can get to it if we need it. We also have permanent files in the back of the archives department in our archives file room. There's all kinds of things there, and there's a rotating showcase so that we can constantly put new stuff out and take stuff in. But there's so many stuff there, letters from early. Or how about this? After 9/11, when all those workers were working on the pile, first search and rescue and then, cleaning up, that was thousands of cops and firemen and iron workers and carpenters and everybody else. And lots of those people were sober. So there was a ground zero group. There was a room that the Red Cross gave AA. And they had to log in when they went into that building because it was very secure. The logbook from the ground zero group is in the GSO archives. It's not always out, but I can tell you, when you read some of those entries, when somebody would like write their name and then maybe write a note about what they were dealing with working there, or how hard it was to stay sober, like this spectacular archives. But then we have group histories. If your group sends its minutes in, we store it. Most areas send their minutes into GSO, some districts, and we store them all. Also are all the group histories. Like some people ask me sometimes, we don't have anyone around to tell us about the history of when our group started. I always say, you got to write the archives department because there might be something there. And if there is, they'll call you and tell you what they have and what the early minutes say about who started it. Now, they won't send you a copy, but you could make an appointment to go in there and review it. It's just a huge part of what we do. And all of this, I hate to say command and control, such bad AA words, but all of this is the responsibility of the general manager, who is currently Bob W., who I served with as a trustee. But Bob has the CFO reporting to him, and the IT director, and the HR director, and the publishing director, and the operations director, and the staff coordinator and director of staff services. Like, it's a huge job to keep this going every day. We only let the only job that has a time limit on the AAWS side is general manager. It is a 5 to 7 year commitment, but never more than 7 years. And that is because we don't want someone being the queen or the king of AA. On the Grapevine side, which we'll talk about the Grapevine next week, on the Grapevine side, it is the executive editor publisher. But the general manager is at every regional forum, every international convention. So it's 4 regional forums a year, most zonal meetings, the World Service meeting. So we want to have rotation there. But, what goes on every day is really miracle creating at the General Service Office. So I am going to stop there and take any general service AWS related questions. Thank you. Do we send out cease and desist letters to protect our intellectual property? And if so, is there a lot of misuse of our marks out there? Yes, and yes to the 100th power. Yes, we send cease and desist letters, and sometimes we take legal action. If you were to look at when AAWS has been a plaintiff, meaning they've sued somebody, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be over a copyright or a trademark. It's our last thing to do, but sometimes we have no choice. We do send out a lot of cease and desist letters. People try, there's a thing, I don't want to get complicated, called the fair use policy. If you go on the AA.org website, it tells you what you can use without getting permission from the AAWS board. A small snippet, a sentence or two from AA literature. But yes, TV shows, people writing books, everybody is always a standing item at the AA World Services board meeting is approval of giving permission for somebody to use something or disapproval. But that's a great question. Is that Friday meeting at the GSO hybrid? Nope, it is not. That is an in-person meeting, 11 a.m. Every Friday. But like I said, I can't suggested more than I could of how great it is to go there. Please send in your questions. How long has Bob W. been the general manager? I believe I am correct in that he is going into his 5th year in February or April, something like that. It was like during COVID. Greg T retired and Bob W is selected. So I would imagine Bob has about 2 years left. Isn't the new limit bequest 12,500? I believe the increase to 7,500 passed, but the bequest stayed at 10. But you know what? Since I have the conference report, let's just look it right up. How's that? Great question. Advisory actions. Page 37. You are correct. 12,500. Any idea when the big move will be completed? Well, I think we should be careful about the terms move. Same building, a floor or two, adjusting with the grapevine, coming up to the AWS floor, the G.S.O floor. The construction project is supposed to be about 6 months, but we know how construction goes. That's a complicated New York City building, meaning everything has to go up in an elevator, everything has to go down in an elevator. All the material has to get delivered. But I think about 6 months. Do you know if there is anything besides minutes that groups are recommended to send to their archives? No. Um, it's really up to the group. Obviously, when we had space problems, but now everything is digitized. But things that are important, sometimes like the International Conference of Young People in AA had some really important things. But like that got traded to somebody's garage every 2 years, whoever the archivist was for the advisory council. There was a book signed by Rockefeller's son, who was vice president, Nelson Rockefeller. There was a letter from Bill, a letter from Lois. So what ICIPOD did is made copies of everything, but gave the originals to the archives department at G.S.O. Let's see. What years was Greg Muth manager? You're really testing me out here, but I want to say 2000, 2009 until 2000, end of 8, beginning of 9. He went over 7 years, obviously. Not without controversy. It caused a big thing inside the fellowship. You mentioned movies or TV shows using AA copyright or trademark. Do we charge a license fee to profit entities that we grant licenses to? Or is it simply allowing use or not? It's simply allowing use. A lot of times it'll be about they want us to give what they want is they want to put AA's name somewhere in the credits for whatever reason. So they want permission to put a big book in the scene or permission to use the shade of the steps. We don't do that. But they ask all day long. We don't charge people. If I understand correctly, there is an entity for the United States, Canada, and there is an international conference every 2 years. How do the other countries relate to AWS legally and spiritually? Okay, great question. I'm going to start with the International Convention is every 5 years. It's always in the United States or Canada. Why is that? For a couple of reasons. It's called the International Convention, hosted by the service structure of the United States and Canada. I don't know if there is maybe one or two other structures that could possibly pull off meeting the financial requirements to rent a stadium and rent a convention center and book all those hotel rooms and make the financial guarantee and have the banking to do it. It's every 5 years, though, not every two. The World Service Meeting is every 2 years. We do the contracts for that. We do get the space. Originally, the plan, if you read the original conference charter, would be every country would be part of our General Service Conference. One, that changed in the 50s. We're not headquarters. These other countries, we're not connected legally to them, just spiritually. The World Service Meeting is not a deliberative body. They do not make policy decisions. It is a sharing of information body between the countries that have a general service structure. Each country is allowed 2 representatives. In our country, we send the trustee at large US and the trustee at large Canada. There was an off-Broadway musical that just closed called Sober Song the Musical, which played out an AA meeting in detail. Would this type of performance require AWS review or approval? No. I mean, not in this country. I mean, all you got to do is turn on the TV 24 hours a day. Somebody on that show is sober or drinking or in and out of AA or God knows what. No, we don't control or tell people what to do. If you misrepresented AA some way, there are sensitive issues that the board gets involved in. Is the general service app infringing on copyright or intellectual property? I'm trying to understand. You know what? I love this question for so many reasons. I don't even know if I can find my general service app, but I'm going to tell you the history. Oh yeah, I do. I have it. So here it is, the general service app. Mind you, the person was smart enough not to call it the AA app. But let's talk about the general service app and our complete failure with Meeting Guide app. Not a failure now, but a failure in the start. You can look at the history of the General Service Office or service. There is no doubt in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, there is nothing that the office has done that more intimately invades on a daily basis AA members' lives than the Meeting Guide app. I have mine right here. I use it all the time. Not only can I get meetings, there's also news there. Look at that. Publishing director. There's the announcement. Newly revised Markings on the Journey video. AAWS highlights. Box 459. It's awesome. And yet we thought it was a bad idea for years. Mostly because the people making the decision didn't use technology at the time. They had aged out. And so what happened? I can't give his last name, but I can't even call him young anymore. I would say a young guy, but Josh is getting older. But there was this brainiac named Josh who said, this is crazy. And he developed Meeting Guide app. And what did he do? He got central offices and intergroups to connect their meeting directories to his app so that people traveling would have it all in one place. Mind you, this is a young kid who took that initiative because we wouldn't do it for years. So you know what wound up happening, because God is a comedian? We had to call Josh in for a meeting. And then we leased it and bought it from Josh. Something that we said was a horrible idea for years, which is now instrumental in everybody's life. So, surprising, because Josh is a thinker, Josh said, wait a minute. We have 93 areas in the United States and Canada with 93 websites. Like, why don't we have one app where you could go to every website easily for an area? And that's what he did. I laugh now because I just heard some delegate on a rant. We're not connecting to that. Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is? He's the kid who is smarter than all of us and built Meeting Guide app that we then had to buy from him. And I'm not saying he made a lot of money. I'm just saying, what a kick in the ass to our egos. Saying no for year after year that it was a bad idea. Could you imagine if we got rid of Meeting Guide app? What the fellowship would do today? So I go to general service and I'm just amazed. There's news, areas, but you can just pull up an area. And here's all the areas that participate. Right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Let's see. There's about 22 areas out of 93 that are participating. And this app is awesome. Awesome. So we're so quick to like point fingers and bash people. Meanwhile, he's responsible for the greatest user-friendly, member-friendly piece of technology. And now he's doing it. I love this. I can go in here. I can go to Area 2 Alaska. They have 11 districts. I can then go to one of the districts. It's amazing. Do you ever think how many websites we have in AA, in general service? Start with the Grapevine and AWS. That's 2. Go to the 93 areas. Now we have 95 websites. I'm not going to give an estimate as to how many districts per area. Do you know how many websites are out there? This is such an ingenious thing. So I'm glad somebody asked a question, and I can't wait to see what happens with it. Our area does not participate in it. I would go to the app, I'd go to the information, I'd send information to them, and I'd bring it up at your area, to your area chair or somebody. And obviously your area gets to make its own decision. I can just tell you the history of Meeting Guide app. Let's see. Yep, you'd have to ask your area. Any other questions other than that? Next week we'll go to the Grapevine. It's called the General Service app. And if you go to it, what does it look like? It's an upside down triangle, like the upside down groups at the top, district, area, conference. It's blue, green, yellow, circle and triangle, but the upside down triangle because it's service. So the groups at the top. So that's it. We will close in the usual fashion with the responsibility statement. Hope everybody has a great week. I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible.